The Collapse, 90 Days Without the Internet. A story of survival, love, and chaos. Part 1. The Fall of the Digital World. The city of Chicago buzzed with its usual energy. Skyscrapers gleamed under the autumn sun, and people rushed about their lives, glued to their phones, buried in digital conversation. Michael Livingston, a 40-year-old high-ranking executive at one of the largest banks in the country, tapped his phone screen while waiting for his morning coffee. A stock market update, a message from his ex-wife Amber about picking up the kids this weekend, a glance at Vanessa Cruz's latest painting on Instagram. Life was fast, convenient, controlled by algorithms and notifications. But everything changed in an instant. At exactly 8:43 a.m., the first disruption occurred. The internet crashed. At first, people assumed it was a minor outage, a network glitch, nothing more. But then, mobile service went down. Calls, texts, nothing worked. Within minutes, the chaos rippled across the city. Digital payments failed. ATMs displayed error messages. Electric cars refused to start. The entire banking system collapsed as people frantically tried to withdraw cash, only to realize they had no access to their accounts. Michael's office turned into a war zone. Executives shouted, employees panicked, and customers swarmed the building demanding answers. But there were no answers, only fear. His best friend and colleague, Anthony Gibson, rushed into his office, his usually calm demeanor shattered. "Mike, this is bad. It's not just the bank. The whole damn grid is down. No internet, no money, no nothing. We are completely cut off." Michael clenched his jaw. "It has to be a cyber attack. Maybe a government breached something they'll fix in a few hours." But hours turned into days, and then the world truly began to unravel. Vanessa Cruz, the quiet but fiercely independent artist who lived next door to Michael, watched the city descend into madness from her apartment window. The first day had been surreal, people wandering, confused, unsure of how to function without their devices. By the third day, grocery stores were looted, streets were filled with angry mobs, and trust among neighbors started to break down. Without digital maps, people got lost in their own city. Without communication, families were separated. Without access to funds, the economy ceased to exist. And as the world fell into darkness, Michael, Vanessa, and Anthony were about to learn just how fragile civilization really was. Part 2. The Price of Survival. By the end of the first week, the city had transformed into a nightmare. Supermarkets had been ransacked, pharmacies emptied, and gas stations turned into battlegrounds. With no way to communicate, rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered of a government shutdown, others of a foreign cyber attack. But the truth remained elusive. Michael knew one thing. He had to find food for Emily and Adam. He spent the first few days rationing what little he had left in his apartment. But supplies were running dangerously low. It was time to venture out. Michael knocked on Vanessa's door. When she opened it, he was taken aback. Her apartment was neat, organized, and stocked with food and water. "You were prepared for this?" he asked. Shocked. She smirked, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "Let's just say I don't trust modern society." Reluctantly, she agreed to help him. Together, they navigated the eerie streets, avoiding gangs that had begun forming in abandoned stores. In a tense encounter at a grocery store, Michael and Vanessa found themselves facing an armed group hoarding supplies. Michael's banking experience and negotiation skills saved them from violence, but Vanessa's sharp instincts warned him this was only the beginning. Meanwhile, Anthony had been piecing together information. He tracked down an underground resistance group claiming to know the truth behind the attack. According to them, the collapse was no accident. It was a deliberate act of sabotage by a secret organization known as the Dawn Protocol, a group hell-bent on resetting civilization to a simpler time. With the city crumbling, desperation rising, and unseen forces pulling the strings, Michael, Vanessa, and Anthony faced an impossible question. Adapt to the new world or fight to restore the old one? Part 3. Betrayal and Revelation. The second month of the blackout had turned Chicago into a city of tribes. People no longer moved freely. Gangs controlled entire neighborhoods, and violence was a daily occurrence. Michael had found a hidden food source in an abandoned storage warehouse stocked with supplies, but he wasn't the only one. A group of armed scavengers had taken control of the building. To get food for his kids, Michael struck a dangerous deal. He would help them manage and distribute the supplies, using his negotiation skills to keep conflicts at bay. But deep down, he knew he was only delaying the inevitable confrontation. Vanessa, meanwhile, revealed a secret past that shook Michael to his core. She wasn't just an artist. She had once been involved in cyber warfare, working with underground hacktivist groups. Her knowledge of the Dawn Protocol was intimate, and she suspected that the blackout was only the first phase of something much larger. Anthony's meeting with the underground resistance took a tragic turn. Someone had betrayed them. The safe house where he met the resistance was ambushed, and Anthony barely escaped with his life. He now carried a vital piece of information. The government had known about the attack in advance. They had let it happen. As tensions reached their peak, the group faced their biggest challenge yet, a decision that could determine the fate of what remained of their world. Stay in hiding or fight back. Part 4. The Breaking Point. Tensions had reached a boiling point. The fragile balance of power in the city was crumbling, and Michael, Vanessa, and Anthony were caught in the storm. Michael's uneasy truce with the scavenger group was on the verge of collapse. The leader, a ruthless man named Carter Hayes, had grown suspicious of Michael's intentions. When Carter discovered that Michael had been secretly stashing food for his children, he made his stance clear: loyalty or exile. With no other option, Michael prepared for the inevitable, a fight for survival. Meanwhile, Vanessa's past caught up with her. One night, a masked figure slipped into her apartment, leaving behind a single message scrawled on her canvas: "You can't run forever." She recognized the symbol beneath the wordset belonged to the Dawn Protocol. They knew she was alive, and worse, they knew she was interfering. Vanessa had to make a choice: confront her past or disappear before they came for her. Anthony, reeling from the ambush that nearly cost him his life, was determined to uncover the truth. He had found a high-ranking official within the government who had direct ties to the Dawn Protocol. If this was true, it meant that the highest levels of power had orchestrated the collapse. With the help of a remaining resistance cell, he planned one final mission: expose the truth and send a message to what remained of the world. But betrayal lurked around every corner. On the night of Michael's planned escape from the scavenger camp, Carter's men stormed his hideout. Someone had informed them. Vanessa barely managed to slip away, but Michael was captured. Beaten and left in a dark basement, he knew that his time was running out. Vanessa, torn between saving Michael and her own survival, reached out to Anthony. They had one Chansetto use the Resistance's last remaining resources and storm Carter's compound. It was a suicide mission, but neither of them was willing to leave Michael behind. As dawn broke over the shattered city, the final battle for survival was about to begin. Part 5. The Rescue and the Truth. The plan was reckless, desperate, but there was no other way. Vanessa and Anthony knew that Carter Hayes' compound was heavily guarded, but they had one advantage: Carter didn't expect them to strike first. Under the cover of darkness, they moved through the ruins of Chicago, guided by Anthony's contact in the resistance. The mission was simple: get Michael out, eliminate Carter if necessary, and disappear before the Dawn Protocol found them. Inside the compound, Michael was barely conscious. Days of beatings and dehydration had left him weak, but his mind remained sharp. He listened carefully to the guards' rotations, memorizing their patterns. If help wasn't coming, he would make his own escape. But help was coming. Vanessa took the first shot. A silenced pistolone of the last working firearm she had managed to barter for dropped a guard at the entrance. Anthony followed, leading a small team of resistance fighters who had agreed to the mission. They moved fast, taking out Carter's men one by one. Then something unexpected happened. As they breached the basement where Michael was being held, he wasn't alone. A young woman barely 20 was shackled in the corner. She was bruised but alert. When she saw Vanessa, her eyes widened in recognition. You were supposed to be dead," the girl whispered. Vanessa froze. "Who are you?" "She's one of them," Michael rasped. "She's Dawn Protocol." The moment shattered as alarms blared. Carter had been waiting for them. A firefight erupted in the compound. Bullets flew. Chaos reigned. Anthony's men took heavy losses, but Michael was freed. The girl who called herself Iris begged to go with them, promising that she had information that could change everything. Vanessa hesitated, but Anthony made the decision for her. If she knows something, we take her. As they escaped through the burning remains of the compound, Carter Hayes emerged from the wreckage, bloodied but alive. "You don't understand what you're fighting," he called after them. "This isn't about survival. This is about evolution." Vanessa fired a shot, but Carter disappeared into the smoke. Now, with Michael safe and a new mystery to unravel, they had a choice: go into hiding or finally face the Dawn Protocol head-on. And Iris, the girl they rescued, had only just begun to tell them the truth. Part 6. The Dawn Protocol Unveiled. The group regrouped in an abandoned train station beneath the city, a temporary sanctuary from the chaos above. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the damp walls as Iris, still shaken from her captivity, finally spoke. "You think this is about control?" she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "It's not. The Dawn Protocol isn't just a terrorist group, it's an experiment, and we're all a part of it." Michael leaned forward. "Explain." Iris took a deep breath. Decades ago, a secret organization within the government predicted that society would collapse under its own dependence on technology. They designed the Dawn Protocol as a Rosetta way to test humanity's ability to survive without the digital world. The blackout wasn't an attack. It was a carefully orchestrated test to see if we were worthy of our own evolution. Vanessa clenched her fists. "That's insane. Millions of lives are at stake, and they're treating this like some kind of social experiment?" Iris nodded. "Yes, and it's not over. The final phase is coming." Before she could explain further, a gunshot rang out. One of Anthony's men dropped to the ground, blood pooling beneath him. "Drop your weapons," a familiar voice commanded. From the shadows, Carter Hayes emerged, flanked by heavily armed mercenaries. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Anthony. Michael's stomach twisted. "Anthony?" His old friend looked pained but resolute. "I had no choice, Mike. They offered me a way out. A chance to be on the winning side." Vanessa's hand tightened around her pistol. "You betrayed us." Anthony hesitated, then raised his weapon. "I did what I had to do." Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the station. Michael tackled Anthony before he could fire. The two old friends locked in a brutal fight. Vanessa and Iris took cover, returning fire as Carter's men closed in. The battle was swift, bloody, and merciless. Michael pinned Anthony to the ground, his hands tightening around his former friend's throat. "Why?" he growled. Anthony gasped, his vision blurring. "Because I was afraid." A single gunshot ended it. Anthony's body went limp. Vanessa stood over them, gun smoking. "We have to go, now." With Carter's men scattered and Anthony gone, the remaining survivors fled into the tunnels. But the fight wasn't over. The Dawn Protocol was still in motion. And as Iris finally revealed, the final phase would be far worse than anything they had faced before. The collapse was just the beginning. Part 7. The final phase begins. The tunnels stretched on for miles, damp and suffocating, but there was no turning back now. With Anthony gone and Carter's forces momentarily scattered, Michael, Vanessa, and Iris had only one goal: stop the Dawn Protocol before the final phase commenced. Iris finally explained everything. The blackout was only the first step. They've been monitoring how society adapts, who thrives, who falls apart. The final phase is the purge. Michael's blood ran cold. Purge? Iris nodded. They've identified the weak links, those who failed the test. The Dawn Protocol has a list, and if we don't stop them, thousands of people will disappear overnight. Vanessa clenched her jaw. How do we stop them? There's a failsafe, Iris admitted. One of their own turned against them years ago and built a way to shut the whole thing down. The problem is, it's inside their main facility. Michael exhaled sharply. So we break in. Before Iris could respond, a deep rumbling shook the tunnels. The ground cracked, dust raining down from above. Vanessa grabbed Michael's arm. They're coming. They ran, pushing through the dark labyrinth, but the enemy was relentless. Carter Hayes wasn't done with them yet. Emerging onto the ruined streets of Chicago, they found themselves cornered by a dozen armed men, and at the center stood Carter, bloodied but grinning. "You really thought you could win?" he sneered. "You don't even understand what you're fighting." Michael stepped forward. "Then explain it to me." Carter tilted his head. "You still don't get it, do you? We're saving humanity. The weak are dragging the strong down. The Dawn Protocol was never about destruction, it was about purification." Vanessa raised her gun. "You're playing God." Carter smirked. "Someone has to." Before he could give the order to fire, an explosion ripped through the street. Smoke and debris filled the air as masked figures emerged from the wreckage resistance fighters. A battle erupted, gunfire echoing through the ruins. Vanessa pulled Michael and Iris toward cover. "We have to move now." With the resistance holding Carter's forces at bay, they made their way toward the facility, knowing this was their last chance to stop the Dawn Protocol. As they reached the towering remains of a government building, Iris hesitated. "There's one more thing you need to know." Michael turned to her. "What is it?" Iris's expression darkened. "The failsafe? It requires a sacrifice." Part 8. The Last Stand. The entrance to the Dawn Protocol's headquarters was eerily quiet. No guards, no alarms, just an open door leading into darkness. "That's not a good sign," Vanessa muttered, gripping her gun tighter. Michael took the lead, stepping cautiously inside. The facility had once been a government command center, but now it was the beating heart of the blackout. Monitors flickered with static, red emergency lights casting long shadows across the metallic walls. Iris guided them forward. "The failsafe is in the control room, at the core of the building. If we activate it, the entire system will shut down permanently." "But—" Michael glanced at her. "But what?" Iris hesitated. "The failsafe was designed to wipe out everyone involved in the project. Once triggered, there's no escape for anyone inside." Vanessa exchanged a look with Michael. "So it's a suicide mission?" Iris nodded. "One of us has to stay behind to activate it manually." A heavy silence fell over them. Then the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Carter Hayes stepped into view, his face bruised but his arrogance intact. "I was hoping you'd make it this far." Behind him, heavily armed soldiers lined up, weapons aimed. "You've caused quite a mess," he continued, "but it ends here." Michael clenched his fists. "We're shutting this down." Carter laughed. "Are you? And which one of you is volunteering to die for the cause?" Before anyone could respond, Vanessa raised her hand. "I will." Michael spun to her. "Number." She didn't waver. "I should have died a long time ago. My past everything I did it led to this moment. I need to make it right." Iris's eyes widened. You were part of this, weren't you?" Vanessa nodded. "Years ago, I helped design the Dawn Protocol. I thought it was a safeguard, a way to protect humanity from itself. I didn't know what it would become." Carter smirked. "Oh, Vanessa, still trying to be the hero." Before he could react, Vanessa moved. One shot straight between Carter's eyes. He collapsed instantly. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, screams. Smoke filled the hallways as Michael, Iris, and the remaining resistance fighters pushed toward the control room. Vanessa covered them, taking down soldiers one by one. At the heart of the facility, the failsafe terminal awaited. Vanessa took a deep breath and stepped inside. She turned to Michael one last time. "Get out of here. Tell my story." Michael hesitated, every part of him screaming to stop her. But he knew this was the only way. He grabbed Iris's hand and ran. The moment they reached the exit, a blinding explosion erupted behind them. The ground shook, flames bursting through the ruins. The facility collapsed in on itself, taking the Dawn Protocol with it. And Vanessa was gone. Epilogue. 3 months later. The world was rebuilding. Slowly. The blackout had ended, but its scars remain. Cities were reshaped, governments restructured, and people learned to live without the comforts they once took for granted. Michael sat on a rooftop overlooking Chicago, watching the sunrise. In his hands, he held a painting one of Vanessa's eyes. It was a simple scene, a city bathed in golden light, free from the shadows of control. Iris sat beside him. "She did it. She saved us." Michael nodded. "Yeah, she did." As the sun climbed higher, a new world began. One without the Dawn Protocol. one built from the ashes of the old, a world worth fighting for. The end.